For the month of August, I will be posting on Tuesdays a preservation week in the life every Tuesday. And although we are actively looking for a homestead, my garden basically this year is an herb garden. I'm collecting from the farmers market, local farms around me, bulk purchases from places like Azure Standard. The first thing I'm preserving from my own garden is lemon balm. Lemon balm is part of the mint family, but it also has a lot of medicinal benefits. And in years past, I have dried it and we've just drank it kind of like a light flavored tea. My favorite way to serve lemon balm is mixing lemon balm tea with lemonade to kind of lighten the sugar load of the lemonade, but also getting the benefits of the lemon balm. And then we have a water filtration system because our city water is not very good. I have a hot button function, so I just fill that with boiling water, and then I will let it steep for about 15 minutes, and then I will strain it into this glass jar, and then I stir it a few times and let it kind of cool down. I actually use my freeze-dried tray as a large ice cube tray because I don't have any actual ice cube trays. And then I just fill the holes and I put it in my freezer. And then after it was frozen, I just put it in a gallon Ziploc bag that is labeled lemon balm. And my children will take a couple ice cubes and put it in their water and then sip on that throughout the day. Next up, I collected a bunch of herbs from the garden: basil, thyme, lemon thyme, onion tops, and I rinse them out, keep them in gallon bags in my refrigerator, and then I like to set my freeze dryer at night because I find herbs only take 10 to 12 hours. So my freeze dryer will run all night, and then in the morning I package them up. I put my freeze-dried herbs just in little jars that are labeled, and I tend to smush them down. They will crumble, and that's perfectly fine for me. Here I'm doing the green onions. My green onions, I actually planted green onions just from the store, and they have regrown, and I have cut them and snipped them, and they've regrown. So it was a good no-waste project. Here I'm using my favorite mason jar tool to get all the air out. And I forgot to actually put the lid on this time. And I just used some old rings and I labeled the top and I put it in this. And then if I need to fill my jars for fresh using, I will fill them, and then any back stock I will fill in mason jars so it's not all in the same spot. And I always save my stems because I put them in my broth bag. And then my jars go within this container. And I believe this is like the home edit container. Next up, I am sharing 3 ways I preserved garlic. So this garlic I had gotten from Azure Standard, and it was starting to sprout, which the garlic has always saved really well for me. But they were starting to sprout, so I wanted to get them done. And the first thing I'm doing is roasting garlic. I'm picking out a couple of the bad ones and setting those off to the side for trash. And then I'm keeping all of the peels and the little tops that I will also put in my broth bag for when I make broth. But I was already going to roast that eggplant, so I decided to go ahead and roast the garlic. Drizzle my garlic with just olive oil, salt, and pepper, and then make sure that it's wrapped really well in the foil. And it takes about 40 to 45 minutes in the oven, and then I let it cool down completely before I start opening up, and it just pops out. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. I put it in a jar and drizzle a little olive oil and put it into the fridge. Next up, I am just peeling and pressing all of this garlic into this small jar. And this is just a time saver, honestly, that I do because it's one less thing that I have to clean during dinner. I'll push it down and then I just cover it with olive oil. I don't use olive oil a ton, but I've liked this olive oil brand from Aldi because it solidifies in the refrigerator, which means it's a really good oil, and it's just solid olive oil, not extra virgin olive oil. And so I press it down, I mix it with the oil, and then I drizzle a little extra oil on top just to make sure there's no air getting to the garlic oil. And I set it in my fridge along with all of my other lard and tallow and everything. And then the little sprouted ones, I am going to go ahead and plant those straight into the garden for a spring harvest. And then the peels all go in my broth bag in my freezer. Here's just a little tidbit that we had some extra coffee and I didn't want to waste it because it was enough to not, I felt bad putting it down the drain. So I just put it in my silicone muffin tin and I put it in the freezer, and it will go well in a mocha hot chocolate later this winter or an iced coffee here in the next month or two, but I didn't want to go that coffee go to waste. I am making some pesto, and I found last year my seeds from last year did not germinate, and the type of basil actually can really affect the flavor of pesto. And what I found last year is I had planted some dwarf Greek basil, and it was an identical taste to the Costco pesto. If you buy Costco pesto, try finding some dwarf Greek basil for next year. But this year, none of my dwarf Greek basil seeds germinated, so I am just using the Genova basil in this recipe. And my recipe I just used from the back of the Costco pine nuts, and it's amazing. And you did notice that I used the roasted garlic in this recipe instead of having the bite bitterness of fresh garlic. The roasted garlic still gives that garlic flavor, but a subtle almost roasted sweetness to it. I just mixed it up, and I got about 2.5 little jelly jars full of pesto. And I also found this last fall is that my family likes pesto as a condiment when I make roasted chicken and potatoes. That is a new favorite way to eat pesto, so I'm going to make sure that I am putting more jars into the freezer this year because we like it more than just having it as pesto pasta. And that is the first few days of August. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have another way to preserve garlic or another pesto recipe, I'd love for you to leave it in the comments down below. And I will see you next week for another week of preserving.